Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Kate, a.k.a. the Disney Cicerone, and with me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely Jackie, a.k.a. Wishes Mama. We are continuing our series of taking different ages to Disney on this episode, and this one will be all about taking elementary school age kids to Disney. So about 6 to 12 is what we're aiming for here. Jackie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It's been a busy day and a busy week, but I feel like this is well within our wheelhouse, right? Like this is right where we are right now with our kiddos. I have just kind of exited the previous episode age bracket and am now here. So it feels like, we're in the comfort zone now. So I'm excited to give some insight.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. This is where 2 out of 3 of my kids still land in this age bracket, and then I have one that's older. So this is all definitely right where we're at in the sweet spot. So let's jump right in. We got lots of good information in this episode. Let's jump into packing, which we did talk about way back when in episode 2 of Mom Street for like more in-depth, more in-depth packing information. So this is just kind of like just for this age group, what are some of our packing tips? So Jackie, what you got?
There's not a ton to really talk about in this age group. Like it feels very like just standard. Like there's not a lot of extras that you have to think about necessarily. Yeah. Much easier. I will mention that, kids in this age like to give a little bit more input. So that's something to remember and recognize as you're packing and prepping, which Kate, I know you've got some insight on kind of your kids giving them a little bit more responsibility for packing and maybe a little bit more insight.
Yeah. So my personal parenting philosophy is that I'm trying to raise independent, fully functional adults. That's my goal as a parent. So whenever possible, I try to give responsibility to my children, and then I follow up kind of behind them and give them coaching as necessary. Because when you step into this stage of life with your kids, you really step out of maybe not in the 6-year-old one, but as they get a little bit older, you step out of the I'm going to kind of tell you what to do and teach you, and then you step into this, I'm going to coach you on how to do things well, and I'm here to support you as you figure it out. So knowing that, something that I do for all of our trips now is I have a packing list for them that I create in like the Notes app on my phone, and all of my kids have either an iPhone or an iPad just because of school and whatnot.
Right.
And so I will share their list that I've made for them, which is a checklist that they can check off. I share it to their phone, right, or their iPad. And then I can actually see, because we're share the note, they can see when they've checked off the items as they've packed them, or I can see that they haven't started packing yet to remind them.
That's great.
Yeah, I still go back in and go through their suitcases, especially the younger ones, and just kind of like double check that they have some of the stuff, because it becomes my crisis if they don't.
Right. Yes. Yeah. For peace of mind, you need to just do a little double check.
Yeah. And there is things usually we catch, like maybe they did. And, sometimes they'll say like they don't understand something that I put on the list. They'll come and ask me and whatnot. But it is helpful too when we have repeat trips. I just go back into that note and I can either like, just copy it or whatnot. It saves so much time in the long run. Yeah. And also just allows them some personal responsibility of like, okay, these are the things I've got to pack, but I get to make some choices about what I wear and those kinds of things, so it's helpful.
Yeah, and we do that, but it's a little bit more hands-on. My kids are 6 and 8, so they're a little bit on the lower end of this age bracket. But we do a lot of like, okay, this day we're going to this park. Here's what the weather's going to be like. What do you want to wear? And then we set it out together and bag it up together and put it in their suitcases and that type of thing. But it is more fun, I feel like, at this age, because you do kind of exit the I'm going to pick everything out for you stage, and you get the more of what do you want to wear? Here are some choices, or, your whole closet is a choice, however you want to do it as a parent, whatever your preference is. We like to theme our days. So like, to Magic Kingdom, maybe we all wear like a Mickey and Minnie of some sort. So like, okay, here's your Mickey and Minnie choices. Which do you want to wear that day? Those types of things. So it's more fun to kind of pack it. It's a little bit more time intensive just if you do it that way, just because you can't just like pull and pack, and kind of whip through it as you maybe were used to previously when they were toddlers and didn't have opinions about their clothes necessarily. Yeah. Some may do, some do, right? But like my kids never cared when they were that young, but they care now.
Yeah, and I've found that right around age 7 or 8, I think right on 8, my kids are like, I'm kind of done wearing costumes of any sort. I'm just done.
Mine were never into costumes.
Yeah.
They just never, it was never something that appealed to them.
Yeah.
And part of it was because we tended to visit more when the weather was warmer and they didn't really have something that made sense for them to wear.
Sure.
And with my daughter, she never really she wasn't the girl that wanted to wear the big princess dresses. So it's like, okay, well, I'll find you some cute, thinner, short princess dress kind of cosplay-ish outfits, and you can wear those instead. So that was kind of her version of that.
So as my kids kind of exited that stage of like costumes, then we just decided to do Disney bounding, which if you don't know what Disney bounding is essentially kind of like using everyday kind of clothes and then making it kind of allude to a character. So you can definitely do a lot of great Google searches, Pinterest searches for Disney bounding for ideas, but it's something that my girls like to match me because I do a lot of Disney bounding. So what I've done is like I will make them lists of like characters I already have or rides or whatever that I already have Disney bounds for. And then they kind of like, they gather up together and they kind of like decide what they're going to wear. Because I was like, I don't want to buy all new clothes for me, like so expensive. I'll buy them a couple new things that then they can also repurpose and use for school because it's Disney bounding. So it makes sense. But.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about bounding, right? Is you can get just like a plain colored t-shirt that they can then wear year round. And it's not exclusive to just wearing when you go to the parks, which is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing just about packing in this age is that you do also have to think about kind of more rooms for accessories because they might have more ears that they want to wear, or if they're bounding, they have multiple pairs of shoes maybe that they want to bring that maybe you weren't initially planning for, and their clothes are bigger. So bigger suitcases, you really just have to kind of think about what makes sense.
Like a lounge fly, if they've got a lounge fly, that takes up a ton of space.
Bags or whatever they're going to be wearing if they're going to. And we'll get into park bags a little bit later, but if they're going to be having their own park bag, what type of bag is it? Where is it going to fit? Those types of things are good to consider. My husband and I were just talking about that. We think our kids are to the point now where like, they probably need like more full-size suitcases rather than just like the little kid sizes that they've been in, because now they're older. It's like, well, their clothes are bigger and they need more space for all of their stuff that they want to bring because they have all these opinions about things now.
Yeah, we got like a set of, because we did a ton of traveling cross country this past year. And so we got a set on Amazon that was like, that had 2 pretty considerably large suitcases in it and then like a smaller one and then some like little bags. And that it was like maybe $130 or something for all of them. And they make sure that they roll really well because then your kids can push them themselves. Even if they're not like pulling them behind them, they can push them. So those 4-wheel ones that roll really well.
Yeah, and those are helpful.
Yeah, very helpful, especially because, you just run out of hands as a parent for bags that are that big. So,
and that's helpful regardless of how you get there, right? It's helpful in the airport if you're flying. It's helpful if you have driven and you're getting your luggage to your room from your car. Like all around, just helpful to have good rolling suitcases, especially for your kids.
Yeah, and again, personal responsibility. They need to start learning how to, take care of their own things. And, so we always tell them like, if you packed so much stuff that you can't carry your backpack, you need to leave some things behind because you have to carry your own backpack.
Right. So, yes, absolutely. So that's a little bit about space. And then just a note that older kids may or may not choose to participate in the Disney bounding. Let them wear what they're going to be comfortable in. Give them some guidance on that to make sure that it is something that they are going to be comfortable in the parks, especially if it's going to be hot. If they're going to be sweaty, if it's going to be raining, they're going to get wet. Any of those weather things that could happen on either coast, no matter what Disney park you're going to, help them with that. But it's okay if they don't want to do it once they get a little bit older, which Kate, I think you have some probably experience with your oldest with that.
Yes. Yeah. And, it's interesting because like I still have to give guidance to my teenager about like, hey, like here's some things like you have to wear. And, it's funny because it's like middle school and high school boys in particular, they like to wear shorts and they don't want to wear pants ever, even when it's freezing out and it's a thing.
My 8-year-old is already there. He's like, why do I have to wear shorts? I'm hot all the time. I'm like, because you go outside. And when you go outside, it's not as warm.
I know. It's a losing battle for me. I just given up. I'm like, okay, at least you have your winter coat on. So,
right.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Right. Now, do you use packing cubes for your kids in their suitcases, or do you just primarily use those for your own?
I haven't really used it for them so much just because they don't travel as often as me. So it didn't seem like an investment I wanted to make. But if you do travel a lot, I highly recommend packing cubes are a great way to go to keep things organized and whatnot. Usually, though, I will pack for my kids some sort of laundry bag so they can at least separate their dirty stuff from their clean stuff in their room. And it helps keep the room organized as well. So we do that.
Yeah. We do that too because like we've talked about in previous episodes, we do a load of laundry typically while we are on vacation.
I don't do that.
To each their own. Because we drive, we typically will just bring like one hamper that everybody throws all their laundry in, and then halfway through we clean it and put it back in their suitcases because it's clean clothes then. And then at the end of the week, any dirty clothes that are still in there, they just travel in the hamper in our van back home with us. So it's already ready to just be put in the laundry room when we get home.
Yeah, that's nice. But it's good to kind of help them keep their clean stuff away from their dirty stuff because yes, tend to just throw everything back into their suitcase. Or the bathroom floor. Those are the two places they go.
So true. And there are so many scents and smells and germs that come home on their dirty clothes from the parties.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, imagine their normal smell and germs and multiply that by like 20.
Yeah.
And that's like the baseline at Disney. So
having laundry bag, basket, whatever you got, even a garbage bag that you can just like separate it in it just to keep it simple, whatever you need, it I think is really important, especially at this age because they get, I don't know if they just get stinkier as they get older. Just saying.
Yeah. So, well, and at this age, we have started to utilize more of the like drawers and the dressers in the rooms too.
Oh yeah, we always do
because it's just so much easier to, even if we have, Kate and I have talked about our Ziploc bag method, right, where we put every thing for the day in a gallon Ziploc bag, but I'll even just stack those in a drawer and then the other half of the drawer that I have for the other kiddo. So like most of the time I can fit both of theirs in one, and then it can also become hey, put your dirty stuff in your suitcase because there's nothing left in your suitcase. It's all in the drawer. So that's another route if you want to do that. That way everything that's clean is still in Ziplocs, which is another helpful way to do that.
Yeah, and I will say that the Ziplocs, you can get jumbo-sized Ziplocs for when your kids get older, just especially when you have planned outfits.
Yeah, because my son now that he's 8, it's like, we are busting at the seams in those gallon-sized bags.
They like
my daughter
fit anymore.
Can pretty much do it still, but my son, I'm like, we need to upgrade.
Yeah, so you can still use them. Yeah, you can still use them. Just get bigger bags as they get older as well. And I will mention because I don't think we put it anywhere else on here that just remind your kids about deodorant, especially headed to Florida, and especially if you like don't think your kid's ready for deodorant yet. There's some great ones out on the market that are like, good for kids. I like the Native brand is a really great one for kids that don't have a lot of extra stuff in them. Like they just might need it in Florida more than they do at home. And I'm just saying this might be the time to just, your kid and whatnot. But just saying might be something you might need for the trip that you haven't thought of before.
So true. So true. Especially towards the end of this age bracket that we're talking about, right? So
yeah, for sure. I would say anything like 8 and up definitely probably needs that at that point. Yes. But you decide for your own child, just saying. So deodorant is everyone's BFF. Yes, thank you, Cassie, in our chat.
Everyone, not just your people you're traveling with, but everyone you're around, because you get very close to lots of people, whether you choose to or not, whether it's intentional or not. It just happens at the Disney parks. So, yep. Exactly. Okay, let's talk a little bit about ordering. We've talked about this when it comes to just luggage and packing in general the past 2 episodes. At this age, there's not a ton that is like super helpful to order other than maybe some snacks and groceries. And at this age, they're probably old enough that you could also just plan to stop or grab an Uber to get what you need too, because you don't have, a toddler to wrangle or an infant that is going with you. So they're probably at the age where they could help you at the store if you want to do that, and you have time to do that. So it really is up to you. But snacks, grocery, a case of water is usually helpful to have in your rooms just to kind of plan that ahead of time.
Yeah, if you're not going to order snacks, I highly recommend packing some in your suitcases, some of their favorite ones, because especially as they grow. If they're going through a growth spurt, they're going to eat like crazy, and it will save you money for them to have to be able to snack on some things that they're used to snacking on, instead of you having to shell out money every single time they say they're hungry, so
Yes.
which might not be during all the meal times. So, yeah, just helpful, I think, at this age.
Well, and smaller, smaller compact snacks that will go a longer way. So protein heavy stuff, things like that, that will kind of get them a little bit further than maybe just a bag of goldfish would. Now, nothing wrong with goldfish. We love goldfish in my household. They are like currency over here. But some protein for literally goldfish and animal crackers. We're back on an animal cracker kick. I'm like, oh man, guys, okay. Anyway, but my husband likes to have like beef jerky that he'll take with him, and like my kiddos will eat some of that too. So high protein stuff, I definitely suggest if you're looking at what kind of snacks to take, because I think that's always helpful in the parks.
Yeah. So next up, we have kind of stroller. We've been talking about strollers for the last couple of ones, but in elementary school age, the hot topic is, what age do I stop needing a stroller? And this is like, there's a lot of feelings about this from a lot of people.
There is. I am of the firm belief that if you're questioning, if you're erring on the side of like, I don't think we'll need it, just take it. Yeah. Just take it. Because we did that on our last trip. We were debating, because we did some of the parties. We did Jollywood. We did Very Merry on our trip last year. And we were like, well, those days aren't quite as long, but they're super late. But they might be able to make it. But I was like, I just looked at my husband. I was like, we just need to take the stroller. Like, we just need to take it. So I would say up through probably about 7 or 8, it's still a good idea to really heavily consider whether or not you're going to take it. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I have a comment in my chat that says, I have a couple of comments here. Danielle says, my daughter turned 7 on our last trip and I took a stroller. And Christina says, kids with special needs might need strollers, so people shouldn't judge. Agreed.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
And then another Danielle says, our 9-year-old started playing on the ground at Epcot with a hurt toe, so we ended up with the strollers, like a wheelchair. So, I mean, yeah, I think at this point, your kiddo and you know how they'll do. And if they get tired really easily, maybe on your last trip, they spent a lot of time in the stroller and they didn't want to get out of it very much. You just kind of know your kiddo. And for us, I think we did stop around age 7. And for sure by age 8, we're totally done. And so we're out of strollers completely at this point. If you do decide to not do a stroller, if they're kind of on the low end of this, just know that you might have to take a lot of extra breaks and your days might not be able to be as long unless you're willing to carry them. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And we're to the points, like I said, I'm 6 and 8 are my kiddos' ages. My oldest last trip spent very little time in the stroller. It was literally just like end of the night, like getting to the buses or getting to the car or getting from where we got dropped off at the resort or parked at the resort back to our room. Like that was the primary time, other than me yelling at him to get in the stroller because it was too crowded and I have mom anxiety. And I said, okay, we got to cross the park, get in the stroller. He's like, but mom, I said, get in the stroller. We're not doing this. Whereas my 6-year-old, she is not ready to not have a stroller at all. She cannot make it longer than maybe 2-3 hours without a stroller. Even when we do like zoo trips or, things like that, that's just where she is. It's just who she is as a person. So she will need a stroller for another couple years. And we have one at this age. We have what is like universally known as like a sit and stand. So the front is like a normal seat and the back is just like this little bench seat. And then it has like a platform. So the kiddo that's on the back can either sit facing backwards or they can stand and hold on facing forward. So that's been really helpful for us because my daughter can sit and my son can hop in and out we always ask him to warn us. Hop in and out as he needs to or as he chooses to.
Yeah, you're definitely at that transitional age, right? And then they're just done with strollers, right? Full stop. And then it's like a whole different world.
Where do you put all your things, Kate?
You carry them or you take less. That's kind of,
Right.
that's really it. Yeah. Or they carry it. That's the other thing, is that they start carrying it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Christina has a comment here. It says strollers prevent meltdowns, which is true.
Yes.
They have smaller legs and aren't used to all the walking in the heat, especially in the heat. And then Danielle also says strollers are brakes for those who are no longer in the stroller. She says our nieces did well when they stopped for lots of AC and shows. So yeah, definitely, you definitely have to schedule in a lot more downtime, maybe some, table service meals to sit for a longer period of time, those kinds of things. Yeah. And to note that if you have somebody in your party who is on an ECV, your kiddo should not be jumping on with them on an ECV, because cast members will be like, hey, like, it's not safe, don't do that. So just an FYI.
Yeah, that's Disney policy. So you may see people do it, but Disney policy is only the adult driving the ECV should be on the ECV. So
right, just for safety, so they don't fall off. So
yes. And just a note about kind of if you're edging out of that stroller phase, just the more independence means you may need to have a little bit more of a discussion about the crowd levels and staying together, and your plan for if you do happen to, heaven forbid, get separated, which we hope never happens, but unfortunately it does happen, especially at the Disney parks. There's lots to look at, lots to be distracted by. So conversations with your kiddo about what to do. Where do we meet? Where are we going to go? Who can I look for that's safe? Show them those cast member badges. I always make it a point to remind my kiddo of those, both of my kiddos, so that way they know, hey, if you see someone with that a name tag on, you know that they are a safe person. And if you need help, you can ask them for help. So all those conversations, if they're old enough to, make sure they have their cell phone on them in their pocket or on their person. If they're old enough, make sure they know your phone number, all of those kind of just general safety things. Just to make sure that if you do get separated, you can more easily find each other again.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Since we're kind of talking about what do you do with all that stuff, let's talk about that with park bags. So at what age do you start having your kiddos be in charge of their own belongings? And for me, it's like as soon as they're out of the stroller, they're carrying their bag. Right. Now, that's not to say that we won't carry some supplies. Like I'll carry things for blisters and carry extra sunscreen. Usually that goes in my bag, but for like the basics, the things that what I got for my kids were these 3 extremely lightweight, like over one shoulder bags that I got from Amazon that were super cheap. They were like $14. And they're very, I wanted to make sure the bag itself was really light because I knew that they were going to get tired carrying it. And they came in 3 different colors. So each kid had their own bag and knew what color it was. And the things that I have my kids carry in their park bags, they carry a water bottle, snacks, any snacks that they want for the day, sunglasses, a poncho, especially if we're going to Florida, a fan if it's going to be really hot. They have their own little fans. A park map. We usually grab a park map for them, and also then a camera, their phone, or like my daughter takes her Kindle for reading in lines and stuff. So those kinds of things. We try not to overly pack it. If I pick it up and it's kind of heavy, I kind of I unzip it and look in here and be like, okay, what can we take out? Because something's making this too heavy for you to carry all day.
Yeah. And the water does get lighter and then heavier and then lighter and then heavier throughout the day. So that, that's just one of those things that maybe get them a smaller water bottle and just plan for more frequent fill-up spots, whenever you're going through the parks. But that's the biggest thing that I'm concerned about when my kiddos get to that age. 'Cause like I said, we're almost there. Is like, okay, what water bottles do we have that they have their big full-size Awalas that we love, but that's probably too heavy for them to carry in their park bags on their own.
Yeah. I mean, and there's, I'm seeing a comment with Daniel, like how your girls are way more equipped than my son. And it's, the thing is like, I know that these are the bare minimum things that my kids need. And sometimes like my girls don't eat as many snacks. So I make sure my son has more snacks because he needs them, or like he will not survive without a fan, or the girls, it's like it's optional. And so, you have to really, it depends on the kid, and what they want to take. Some people will take less, but that's like kind of the bare minimum to just like survive the day in the parks is kind of what I go for. So,
yeah. That makes sense. I think that makes sense. And I think you have some of your favorite picks for like the bags and stuff like that linked in your Amazon, on your Amazon, in
Yes.
your link tree, don't you?
Yeah.
So if people are wanting suggestions on what stuff that Kate uses for her kiddos, you can head over to her Disney Cicerone social media pages and get that link through her link tree over there.
Yeah. It's in my Amazon storefront. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
You also have a note about ear protection too, Jackie.
Yeah. So this is something that my husband and I have gone back and forth about. My oldest, especially, very, very sound sensitive and has been for as long as he's been aware of what sounds are. But at this age, now that he's 8, we've actually switched him over from less of a headphone situation and more of like an earplug situation. So we did do some trial and error to kind of figure out which ones he would like and what would work for him. We ended up with Vibes earplugs for him. He really likes them on the smallest setting that they fit well in his ears. So for him, it's still needed. The nice thing is they come in this tiny little itty bitty case. So super easy to just have in our bags. So that way they're with us at all times. We don't have to worry about the big headphones. My daughter, now that she's 6, she doesn't love fireworks. So as long as we don't set her up right near them, she's okay. But just being aware of whether or not you think your kiddo is going to be sound sensitive and maybe just picking up a pair of earplugs. Like I said, I spent a little bit more on my son because it's just him. It's just we need them for more than just the Disney fireworks. You know, there's kind of reoccurring instances that he would need them. So we did go ahead and do that. But just even some of the cheaper earplug options may be good to just have in your bag just in case if you're concerned about it.
Yeah. And I did see a note from Blair on this side that said, in our chat, that said, air tags for if you're worried about your kid wandering off if they don't have a phone or, an iPad or something on them that already kind of tracks where they're at. An air tag is also really good, perhaps to put in your kid's bag even,
Yeah.
so that you can find them in case they wander off or if their bag gets left somewhere.
So true. Yep. So,
Yep, just saying.
2 reasons for that one for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk a little bit about getting to the parks. And I completely forgot to put notes down for this one, but I can talk about flying a little bit. Because we do fly an awful lot as a family. And it's actually super easy at this age. Quite honestly, it's the easiest age that we've ever been at. Like usually once I just kind of like make sure they're all settled in, I pretty much do my own thing the whole flight and I'm just there if they need something. That's pretty much it. My kids at this age, they can go to their bathroom by themselves and everything. I just kind of keep an eye on them, make sure they come back from the bathroom. Yeah. But they usually bring their devices and a book and just kind of hang out doing that the whole trip. And it's really easy. The only thing is make sure that they, like I said, get the suitcases that roll really easily. So, because sometimes, getting everybody's bags in to check in and whatnot can be a little bit of a hassle. But as long as they're able to do their own stuff, that's great. And I also make sure that they don't overpack their carry-on so that they can't carry it. And then we end up having to carry it. So that's another thing is when we fly, they also pack a bag of snacks. I make sure they pack a bag of snacks as part of their checklist for the plane. And they go through pretty much the whole thing because they eat a lot on the plane. So make sure that they've got that.
Yeah. Now, do you have separate backpacks that you typically have them pack for their carry-ons that are different than the park bags you were just talking about? Because that's something just to consider.
Yeah, the park bags are way smaller. They take pretty much their school backpack when we travel. I think my daughter has one that rolls because she's small and so she can't carry it. So we made sure to get her a rolling one so she can be in charge of it herself and be responsible. But beyond that, the kids, they just make sure it's something that fits underneath the seat in front of them because you don't want something that has to go in the overhead bin and then you're involved. So. Yeah.
Yes. So make your life easier. Yeah. And just a reminder to make sure you thoroughly label all of your kids' bags, all of your own bags, all that type of stuff. Even when you're in the parks, we tend to still have full ID information on all of our bags when we're in the parks, just in case it gets left behind. It will make its way to lost and found, but if it has your contact information on it, it's so much easier for them to find you and you to find it. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about labeling all of your bags, kids
Yeah.
included.
Yeah, definitely a good idea. Jackie, do you have some tips for driving to the parks?
Yeah, so kind of to echo what Kate was talking about, driving at this age is so much easier than driving when they're little. They're so much more independent in the back seat, right? Like they can reach things without you having to like climb back there and get it for them, those types of things. But still at this age, we still try to do new activity books, or my son is really into like crossword puzzles right now, anything new that you can still kind of pull out to help hold their attention. Again, snacks, making sure you have plenty of snacks packed and you're thinking about the in-between snacks, because my daughter seems to always be hungry anytime we're in the car, no matter where we're going. It could be 20 minutes down the road to gymnastics, or it could be, just, can I have a snack? No, you just ate. So just making sure that you always have snacks with you. A couple things that my kids love, again, 6 and 8, so kind of lower to the mid of this age range. Just things like I Spy. We've started playing the alphabet game with them, where like you find, something that starts with A and call it out, something that starts with B, those types of things. Now that my daughter is old enough to recognize letters, that's something that we can all do, which is fun. But they have loved recently. We got them a special set of dry erase markers, and they draw on their windows in the car, which is fun. Like they love it. And my son will play hangman, they'll play tic-tac-toe, like all of that. So that opened up a whole world of things I love, because now they can reach, right? Like, because it's something about the maneuverability, right? They're both no longer in the 5-point harness, and that makes a difference with what they can do in the back seat. So that's always helpful. We do movies, devices, all those types of things. That's always fun for them.
Yeah, and we found with our long car trips with our kids really like to see our GPS, like our phones. We kind of just like put it on our dashboard, and so that they can also see how much time is left without having to ask us every 10 minutes.
Yes. We taught my son. Yep, we taught my son the same thing. My daughter is in the process of learning, because she can read numbers, but she doesn't know how to tell time yet. So she's in that like almost there stage, but like brother will help her out if they need to know. But yes, we always make sure we have extra chargers for our phones so we can leave the screen on, because my son will ask. And it's nice now that we both have Apple devices, and we love that they have, in the last couple of years, they've made it so you can like add a stop on there. So that way you can update it like, okay, we're going to be stopping for lunch in 45 minutes, and they can keep track of that too. So that way they're not, I'm hungry. When are we stopping? Can we stop now? Yeah. So all of those things. And Kristen, our friend Kristen in my chat just we do the license plate game too for big long car trips. Plates of Legends app on the phone. So yeah, lots of those types of things we can do as well. And yeah, we've started to show my son how to read the states on license, like where to look on license plates as we pass. So I think on our next trip, that will probably be one that we like, he'll be all in. Because I was telling my husband, I want to create like a dry erase, because they have those dry erase markers, so I can create a dry erase like template for him to color in as he finds the states as we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Alrighty, so let's talk a little bit about resorts at this age. So you have a couple of thoughts here, Jackie. Do you want to share those?
Yeah, so we talked a lot previously about like the different themes and the different activities and the proximity and what they, amenities that they had. But really, once you hit this age, it becomes a little bit more about your budget. And some about your theme preferences, right? We all kind of have the ones that we like to go towards. If you want, the super themed, big, larger than life stuff, or if you like kind of more of a tropical feel, or there's all sorts of different things that you can find, especially at Disney World. Disneyland is a little bit more limited on theming, but it is what it is. But I think it's just a lot more dependent on your budget and kind of what your family preferences are for when you go. A lot of the pools and activities are similar. I mean, we talked about the differences between, the value doesn't have the water slide, the moderates and the deluxe do. That's like the main difference between the pool areas, but a lot of the activities are very similar. So it's not as much to consider and kind of stress over, in my opinion, picking the right resort for this age, because I think you're going to be great no matter where you stay.
They'll have fun no matter where
Mhm.
you're at, for sure.
Yes. A couple of my favorites, just for this age, I just wanted to kind of put this in. We love all-star music. We love Pop Century. We really like Port Orleans French Quarter for the pool and slide area. Those have been some of my kids' favorites that we've stayed at. So those are all, they all get the thumbs up from my family.
Yeah. For me, if we're going deluxe, and these are all ones that I've stayed at with my family. So Animal Kingdom was by far, hands down, my kids' favorite place to stay, even it's school age kids, like, because it's just so amazing to see animals outside your balcony.
Yeah.
It's not a cheap place to stay, but
No.
really, really fun. And my kids actually really love the Riviera Resort that we stayed at. I know it's kind of a little bit more like upscale in general, but because it's right on the Skyliner, and we could also go, like the water was there, but like it was really easy to get everywhere because of the Skyliner. They really liked that resort an awful lot, and my kids also like Europe, so that made sense for us. I didn't put on this list, but I think the Poly is a really fun one as well. We've stayed at the Grand Floridian with my kids once upon a time, renting DVC points. Like, don't get me wrong, like we rented DVC points to stay there. But I think that they would probably like the Polynesian. They just haven't stayed there. But we stayed Caribbean Beach and Port Orleans Riverside. We've stayed both those places with the kids because it has that fifth sleeper that you can stay in, and that makes like a huge difference for us. As a family of 5, it's so awkward to try to find rooms that will fit all of us in one room rather than having to pay for 2 rooms. So those are really great options for that. And Caribbean Beach is on the Skyliner as well. And Pop Century, I would recommend for families that are on a budget. That's my favorite of the value resorts. Although I have not, to be full disclosure, I have not stayed at sports yet. But now that I stayed at music this past week. And I stayed in movies before, and I stayed at Pop. So now I just have one more to go, and then I've stayed at all the values. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, again, like we said, you really can't go wrong. But I would suggest that you take a look at the activities, because there may be activities if you plan a resort day, that your kiddos might want to do. They have movies usually in the evening times, lots of activities. They'll do trivia. Kristen in my chat over here mentioned some of the resorts do like tie-dye shirts, which is super fun to do in this age. So there's lots of really good stuff to look at that, like, this age is like where a lot of that is catered to. So definitely take a look at the activities boards. They're usually in like the lobby of your resort or like right by the pool kind of area. If you can't find them, just go see the front desk, either the front desk or the concierge. They can give you an idea of what's going on when at your resort.
yeah, and Danielle makes a good point in my chat. Music and sports are great if you have a rental car because the parking's convenient. It's true that if you are going to take Disney transportation or if you're driving, that also could make an influence about where you want to stay as well.
Yeah, and we always have our car, so that's not as big. I mean, we still prefer to stay somewhere that has like a Skyliner access, just because it's so much easier, because then we're not forced to drive if we don't feel like it. But it is nice when you have a car. It gives you any of the options are good at that point, because you have the ability to do all of that.
It's true. In terms of Disneyland, I mean, nothing's changed from my previous advice. Just if you're not going to stay, if you are going to stay on site, I recommend the Grand Californian, especially because it has that entrance to California Adventure, and it's the closest one. So I recommend that one for Disney properties. And also, if you can get a theme park view, that's like the coolest rooms ever, because then you can like see World of Color from your room, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I will say that for offsite, though, which is where most people stay at Disneyland because it's what we can afford, definitely stay on Harbor Boulevard. I don't recommend staying on Catella unless you can avoid it, unless you're on like a severe budget and then you're just going to walk really far. But anything that's on Harbor Boulevard that's closer to that like middle entrance plaza is usually my recommendation, because then you don't have to walk as far. And Anaheim can get a little bit sketchy late at night, early morning, just because it's Anaheim. So just, yeah.
True. And I will mention before we kind of jump on and start talking about parks. If you're looking for more information about resorts, we haven't mentioned this in the previous 2 episodes, but we did a ton of episodes on all of the resort options at Disney World and Disneyland. So if you want more in depth, like what you can find and what the prices are look like, we have episodes on that. So scroll back up in our episode list and look for those because we did a whole series on all of that.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the parks. We've got some just general park notes before we dive into the specific parks. So one of the biggest questions we get is, how many days should I spend in the parks?
Yeah.
So Jackie, what is your recommendation for Walt Disney World?
So here's what I will always suggest to, especially this age, is it depends on your budget, right? On how many days you want to go. And I will always suggest, if you're able to, don't do more than 2 park days in a row, because your kiddos are going to get tired, especially if they're to the age where you're not having a stroller with you, but yet they're not really napping in the afternoon, right? So they're not getting caught up on that rest day to day. You've got to have a break day in there. So however many days you're able to budget for, if it's 4 days in the parks or 5 days in the parks, I always suggest 2 days in the parks, a day off, or at least like a good solid chunk of that day off. And then you can go back to the parks after that. But that's always my suggestion.
Yeah, I usually recommend 5 days in the parks, but with a break somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Day 3 is always the hardest. Day 3 is when you feel it. Day 1, you're like riding the high. Day 2, you're starting to get a little tired, but you're still excited. Day 3, everybody's dragging and maybe fighting. And that's just always how it is. So if you can try to plan a break on that day 3, that will give you enough energy to get through the rest of your week, because it's just really, really, really important that you get that break. I agree with Jackie on that.
Yeah. So we will typically do, which we'll talk about park hoppers here in a moment, but we typically do just base tickets. So we usually do 1 day per park. So we'll do 2 parks and a break, and then the other 2 parks on our trip. That's kind of how we like to set it up, because that's what works well with our kids.
Yeah, we bookend it with Magic Kingdom. So we do 2 days at Magic Kingdom on either end, and we do all the rest of the parks plus a break in the middle, and that works pretty well. But I know a lot of people do a full week, and that would kind of work for doing 5 days with some break somewhere in the middle. That makes sense.
Yes.
But it is important at this age to involve your kids in the planning process. Not only is it like get them more buy-in, because especially as they reach that preteen part near the end, not everybody's excited about going to Disney necessarily, which is sounds awful, and it sounds crazy to some of us, especially if you have like little kids now and you're like, they're always going to love doing this. Like, maybe not.
Maybe not.
So, getting them involved in the planning makes them more excited about it in general, because they're like, oh, I get to like plan the things that I want to do, as well as making compromises for other people as well.
Yes.
But, what we also like to do is get them, not only watching POVs of rides and things like that, but we like to get them books about the park so they can read about it. We have a couple hidden Mickey books that my youngest really loves. She's even taught me where a few of them are. This is not a cheap one, but we have this whole series that's called Going to Disneyland or Going to Magic Kingdom. It has it for specific parks in Walt Disney World. But these are fantastic books. I feel like they're like $30, so they're not cheap. But they're beautifully done, because they have not only like full color pictures and facts and everything about every single land, but they also have little like activities. They can rate every ride. Like, I think you can see the handwriting for my kiddo in here. Rate this attraction for how they liked it, but it gives you a little bit of like information about it.
Yeah.
They give you all kinds of just really interesting stuff about all the different things. So I really love this series. If this might be like the only time your kiddo ever gets to go to the parks, this is a really cool way of prepping for it.
Yeah.
Because it's just really fun.
It just dawned on me that Disney gives you those when you go on the cruise line. Why don't they do that for the parks?
Right? They should.
I just realized, I was like, wait, we looked at those, but that was for the cruise line. Why don't they? Disney, come on.
No, but look at this one. Has like made a secret code, and then it was like they drew the little pictures to like
that's
the
so
secret
cute
code. they're just really, really well done books. So great, like Christmas gift or whatever. If you know that you're going to be going to Disney in the next year, I recommend those. So
yeah,
great.
I was looking at because my kids have been several times, and I was looking at our good friend Kirk at Walrus Carp on one of his live streams this week was talking about some of the graphic novels that are like the backstory to Galaxy's Edge and Batu. And so I'm looking at getting my kiddo some of those because he's all into graphic novels and like Star Wars and all that. So I'm like, oh, that'll be really fun if I get it for him. Now that's a little bit more in depth, right? Because my kiddos have been, they know the base level. So getting, but anything like that you can find books about the parks. There's a ton of little golden books that are all like little kind of side stories to some of the attractions, like Haunted Mansion has one, Space Mountain has one.
The Little Man at Disneyland for Disneyland.
Yeah, there's really a couple, I'd say.
Yeah.
So there's a couple little golden books that would be great. Like, yeah, like you said, like Christmas gifts or like gifts to give on the plane or in the car on your way down there. Those are great options for that. But yeah, getting them involved is so much fun too, to have them help you plan.
Yeah, and behind the attraction also, if your kiddo likes more Imagineering stuff or wants to know, because usually by this age, the kids kind of like know about, the magic is like helped out by several things. It's not a secret anymore. So you can really start to dig into, well, how is this designed? I know that was really interesting for my son to learn. That's what got him interested in it because it's like the mechanics of how did they do this? That's what he was interested in more than anything else. So, kind of understanding. And then my youngest really likes the history and the stories that are behind things. So, those kinds of things might be really fun to help just kind of build excitement for your trip. And yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be in depth at all either. Like if it just you want to watch some POV on videos on YouTube, and my kids love to tell me their top choices for the parks when we make our we always talk about making your priority list. My kids love to give their input on that now that they kind of know the rides. So we always sit down as a family and go around in a circle and we all give our top one and we start there and then we make our secondary list after that. So that's always fun to do too.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about you mentioned park hoppers versus base tickets, and it's really interesting because I think for me as just my budget, I can only afford base tickets with my family. But if I had enough money to do whatever I wanted, I probably would get hoppers with my older kids, like leaning towards that 12-year-old range, just so that we had options for if they wanted to go ride their favorite ride again in another park. Because I feel like on this last trip, my son really, really, really loved like the 3 like main thrill rides or whatever, and he really just he wanted to go and do them again, but we weren't headed back to that park because we didn't have tickets for that. So I think that as they get older, having a park hopper makes more sense than it does when they're little. But the cost is not insignificant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something you have to look at your budget to consider. We have always done base tickets with my kids up to this point. Our next trip that we have booked, we did splurge to do park hoppers now that they're, like you said, now that they're a little bit older. Because this is more of an extended trip because it's my full family and just the situation is different. So we have a couple extra park days at the end of the trip that aren't completely planned that we kind of intentionally left open-ended to let our kids pick because they've been enough and they have they have very strong opinions about what they like and what they don't like. So it's one of those things where we didn't get to get on this ride, let's hop back over there. And they're old enough that they can handle it, and we're okay with not going open to close at one park per day with them at this point because they've been enough and they're very spoiled in that they've been enough so that it's not one of those things where we're worried about missing out on things because they've done a lot.
Right. Well, again, we already talked about how watching POVs and whatnot can help your kiddos kind of know what to expect, especially if they haven't been to Disney a lot and they don't know what to expect. Those are still helpful at this age, even if they're not little and might be scared of things necessarily, depending on their age.
Yeah. And I think point of views at this age are really helpful to give the kids a lay of the land, right? So you can if you're talking about grabbing them a park map or having, downloading the Disneyland or the My Disney Experience app on their device and letting them kind of have the map, whatever it may be, that can give them a little bit more like an idea of where they are. If they know the attractions and then can find them on the map, that can help a lot as well.
Definitely. I think this age was this last trip. My daughter, who's 12 now, she helped me kind of actually plan out our park day, and she helped me. I used the touring plans app to kind of like map it out, but she got it on her iPad so she could kind of like check off as we'd go and like tell us where we're going next and like all that kind of stuff, which was really, really fun. So we don't have necessarily naps at this point, not at least like. They don't usually nap at this point. That doesn't mean to say that your older child might not just conk out in the middle of the day if they're really tired. So, yep. So having a midday park break, it really is kind of, it depends on your family, your touring style, your kids' needs. At those really long, really hot days in Florida, sometimes we know we needed a break. Sometimes, though, my kids were like, okay with just sitting in the AC for, a half hour and just kind of like getting out of the sun. And they were good to go after that. But all of my kids wanted to go swimming and they were disappointed on days when that didn't happen. So our breaks always look like going back and then taking a swim and then taking a rest after that. Also, they really liked playing in the arcade. That became like a big thing at this age. Yeah. And we also it's a really interesting time because this last trip, we could actually leave some of our older kids alone in the room, which was so weird because like we'd never done that before. But like, when your kid is like 12 and 14, like they're old enough to do those kinds of things. And so you know your kids and you know them, what you feel safe doing and whatnot. But we didn't leave the resort. Like we were still in the resort while they were in there. But you just, there's some times when maybe they want to go lay down, but you want to go swim or something like, I don't know, just know that as they age, like the way that you travel changes,
Yeah.
And it's new territory.
Right. And that could be as easy as like my kids would love to like, okay, after lunch, we're going to go back and just like watch a movie in the room.
Yeah.
And you can you can, play with something while the movie's on. Like you have that option, but we're going to go, in the AC. We're going to like where it's not overly stimulating because my kiddos need that kind of like moment in the middle of the day. Right. So, and mom and dad also need that sometimes. Yes. Right. So don't be afraid to be like, okay, mom and dad need to go back to the room, so we're going to leave the park and go back to the resort. Here are your options. This is what we're going to do for this 2-hour period, just to give them a little bit of time away from the hustle and bustle.
Yeah, very important. Okay, let's move on to communication. This is some kind of a newer topic in this series because we didn't really have to talk about this before because your small children are just going to be with you. But if your child has a phone, which some of them do, some of them don't, depending on the age here and your family's, how your family operates. But if your child has a phone, just remind them about some courtesy about phones in the parks. I think is really important. Like don't record strangers. Obviously, they might be in the background of stuff, but like don't like zoom in. I'll just see this one.
No intentional videos in that situation.
Yeah, be mindful of their phone lights, like the screen lights, if they're recording in rides, that they're not like blocking somebody's view or not being really super bright, like turn their brightness down. Also to not turn their flashlight on in any rides, just remind them of that particular rule.
Yep.
Also consider sharing their location and you're sharing yours so that you can see where each other is at any given time just to keep tabs on each other. And also make sure their phone has something to help them maybe hold on to it, like a pop socket or a strap or like something so that doesn't fall out of their hands as easily, especially if they might be holding it on a ride or like on over the water or something like that. It happens. So
yeah, or just holding it in general, walking down Main Street, swinging their arms, and it flings out of their hand. You never know.
Yeah, have good case that is impact resistant in those kinds of things.
Yes.
And I do have a question from Zach here in my chat. Is this the age to get magic bands? And I'd say absolutely. This is a great age for magic bands if you decide you want to have them. They are spendy these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, minimum of like 30 and up. 30, I think, is the discounted rate now if you do it with your package.
Yeah.
At the low end, but most of them are going to be closer to 40 and 50.
But they're really fun. I think they're fun for this age too, especially they get to pick out their own and their characters and their style and whatnot, and then they can be in charge of charging them at night, plugging them in, so they can But they're fun. If they do have one from a previous trip, that should work as well. Just know if it's not the Magic Band Plus, it won't light up and stuff with the shows, but if it's over, like, I'd say if it's older than 2 years, you may get a little iffy on if the battery still works or not. So I probably would get a new one at that point. But usually they work for a long time.
Right. So yes.
So I do have a note about riding alone, which is another thing we haven't quite talked about on yet because they weren't old enough. But technically by Disney standards, I think age 7 is when they're allowed to ride by themselves. And you make that judgment call as a parent when you feel safe letting them do that. But that is a possibility that if you don't want to go on a ride, but they do, and they meet all the height requirements and everything, that they could potentially go by themselves. And, as my kids have gotten older, there has been a couple of times when, like, my son wanted to go on Space Mountain multiple times or something. And we were like, have at it, kid. We'll wait for you right out here, or like call us or text us when you're out of the ride.
Right.
Of course, he's closer to, 13 at this point, so this is the upper age. But that is something that you can start thinking about, are they able to ride alone? Do I want them to do that? You can think about that ahead of your trip as well. And it might just be like, we're not ready for that. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it may be like one of those things where, like, okay, I'll wait in line with you. And then there's always an exit point at the end of that ride. Like, no matter what, like, it's always the chicken exit, right? So whatever, that's what they call it. So whatever, whatever ride you're on, just let the cast member know, like, I'm not going to be riding. They're going to be riding. Can you show me where I can wait for them near the exit or something like that? That's definitely an option that you can do as well if you don't want to completely leave them alone in the line.
Yeah, it was really funny on this last trip because we went on Peter Pan and all 3 of my kids decided they wanted to ride in their own pirate ship. And so me and Elliot rode behind my children in their own pirate ship. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing we've ever done. And they were fine. They're totally fine. They did great. They followed all the rules. And I was like looking at them from across Neverland. I'm like, oh, there they are. They're over there. And we're over here. Right.
Again, one of those conversations about, hey, don't go like out into the walkway without me. Like, wait for me at the exit. Let's stay together. If they're a little bit younger and kind of for sure those conversations
or get older, they just know, because you've done it enough. They just really. But that is a good thing to have.
But when you have an 8-year-old with ADHD like I do, it's like, hey, kiddo, remember, we get off.
No,
to wait. Or, hey, I'm going to go in front of you and you can go behind me. That way I will be there when you get off the ride.
Yeah, especially with single rider lines, because at this point, I think that's probably where you would run into that situation the most, is because you're trying to save some time. And so I think that's where you would need to be like, okay, I would probably go first, as a parent, and then have them come up behind me so that I knew I was there to kind of catch them. Came out, Yeah.
Yeah, because you never know. I mean, most ride exits don't like dump you right in the middle of the walkway. Fantasyland and Magic Kingdom is pretty rough when it comes to that, because some of them do, and that's kind of, you said Peter Pan, and that's what I was envisioning. Like, no, you take a left out of there and you are in the middle of the walkway between Peter Pan and Small World. So just reminders are always helpful when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I definitely can see, like, I remember feeling that way, like when the ages your kids are. Yet it's like totally different when they get older. It's just kind of like, yeah, they'll be fine. Like,
Right.
that anxiety has like just
Yeah.
gone. Like, I just know they'll be okay. So
And that's the hard thing about this age bracket, right? 6 to 12 is a very wide range. So some of this stuff may not apply to your 6, 7, 8-year-old, but it may apply to your 11 or 12-year-old. So
right.
again, like Kate said, like we both said, you know your kiddo, you know what will work for your family. We're just trying to give our best advice when it comes to all of the situations.
Right. Definitely. And also, when they reach kind of those upper ages, let's say, closer to 12, like 12 and crossing into the teen years, allowing them some free time in the parks might be something that you decide you want to do at that point. If you know your kid is responsible enough, maybe they have their own phone so you can communicate with them safely. It's going to be, especially as they hit those kind of middle school years, they're used to having more independence, and we kind of just do it on a very like small basis when they're kind of in the upper echelon of these years in this bracket of, maybe they get to go on one ride by themselves and then you meet back up, or they go off to get a treat from this one place and then they come right back, like those kind of like smaller moments of freedom. And it allows them to feel like they're grown up and they have responsibility and that you trust them, but also within these boundaries.
Right.
To make sure that they're still safe, right? And so you know your kiddo best and you know what you're comfortable with, and, just do what you think is best for your family and your kiddo. But I will say that it is very meaningful to them when they can have those moments of free time. Sometimes those are their best memories from the trip, is when like I got to go on this one ride by myself and like do my own thing. And, that's so just to just be aware that that's part of this age and part of growing up, is letting them have some more freedom.
Yeah, and I did have a comment quite a bit earlier in the chat that like Disney is a safe place, generally speaking. And I do agree with that, primarily because there are so many cast members around at any given time. So if your kiddo needs something, there's going to be a cast member probably within eyesight of them for the most part. The world is still a crazy place, so do what you need to do to keep everyone safe. But generally speaking, because there are so many people that are around to help, I do agree that I'd say Disney is fairly safe.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe place, but I mean it as always, it's full of strangers.
Right. Yes.
And not everybody's background check that goes into the park.
Right.
So, just use your best judgment for stranger danger and all those kinds of things, especially when it comes to kids. So,
yes. And again, those conversations with your kids that you can have ahead of time to just remind them of those things, because you may not be someone that frequents busy places like that. I've had to have those conversations with my kids even just recently, because I've taken them to 2 different events at big stadiums, and it's just been me and my 2 kids. And I have to remind them like, hey, the safest thing you can do right now is make sure that you can always like touch me basically from wherever you are. Don't get further than an arm's length away from me, because there are big crowds and lots of people and I don't want to get separated.
Yeah, for sure. That can be really stressful too in that situation.
Yes. So just those conversations ahead of time to prep your kiddos, no matter what age in this range that we're talking about, are always helpful.
Definitely. Okay. So you put a note here about child swap, which we could talk about for the younger ages. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah. So if you have a kiddo that like is not a thrill ride kiddo, they may be tall enough, but they're just like, nope, not my thing. I tried Space Mountain once, hated it, never want to go on it again. That is perfectly still acceptable for you to use child swap if you need to in that situation. So just keep that in mind. We talked a lot about it with the younger kids when they're too short or, not big enough, not old enough to ride, but it also can apply to your older kiddos. Just keep in mind that at places in Disney World, they're very specific about where you can use it. Disneyland is a little more loosey-goosey from what I've read on the website. But Disney World was very specific about, like, at Magic Kingdom, Barnstormer, Big Thunder Mountain, Seven Dwarfs, Space Mountain, the Speedway, which I thought was an interesting choice.
That's interesting.
But I think just because it has a height requirement, right? Tron and Tiana's. So any of those, if you've got kiddos that are just like, nope, don't want to do it, and you want to utilize a child swap situation, if you're not using lightning lanes or any of that, you can. Again, same thing with anything with a height requirement at Epcot, Frozen, Cosmic Rewind, Mission Space, Soarin', and Test Track. Same thing at studio. So basically, if you've got a height requirement, it's going to be eligible for child swap, and it is still eligible even if your kiddo is tall enough.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And eventually at a certain age, they're old enough to just wait for you at the exit,
Right.
So you wouldn't have to worry about it. But definitely those younger ages, for sure, still use child swap. And same, Disneyland, it's pretty much anywhere with a height requirement. You can ask about it, and it's most likely that they'll have it. But
or anywhere that's dark or, any of that kind of stuff. So that's why it's so hard to know, right? Because even some of even things like the Haunted Mansion, you could probably still, ask for it if they're like, nope, that's not my thing. I don't like the dark. I don't like the spooky stuff. Just talk to the cast member.
Yeah. See if there's something they can do. Doesn't hurt to ask.
Right. The worst they do is say no, and then you come up with a plan B for whoever wants to ride the ride to still get to ride the ride.
That's right. Okay. So let's go into some more park-specific advice for these ages, which will be pretty easy because quite honestly, taking kids to the parks at this age is a really, really fun age to take them, and it's not terribly difficult most of the time, depending on the situation, but most of the time. So, Jackie, do you want to do Magic Kingdom?
Yeah, again, not a ton specifically to talk about. If you want food suggestions, we talked a lot about toddler friendly, which also kind of translates to kiddo friendly if you've got some picky eaters. But just take a look at the menus ahead of time, and you know what your kid likes at this age. You know if they're going to be able to find something. And we've done information about table service and character meals and snacks at the parks. So if you want some of that, more detailed information, you can check out those. But we did suggest Columbia Harbor House, Casey's, Cosmic Rays, Pinocchio Village House, and Pecos Bills at Magic Kingdom for food. With the rides, again, it's just preference at this point. What do your kids want to do? What do they not want to do? Are they tall enough? Because at this age, at the younger spectrum of this, like my youngest is not quite tall enough to ride everything, because she is 6 and she just hit 48 inches. So you may still be in that realm of not tall enough yet, but generally speaking, when you're in this age bracket, they're going to be able to ride everything height-wise. So just ask them what they want to do and make that plan together. Again, characters and shows may or may not be your kiddo's thing at this age. They may still want to hug Mickey and watch the castle show, or they may be like, I don't really want to do that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So just talk to your kids. Yeah. It's okay, we say with tears in our eyes.
Yeah, I remember that none of my kids are really all that interested in meeting characters anymore. And so we just wave to them as we go by. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So
whereas my 6 and 8-year-old are still all about I want to go meet that character. So, and
some kids never outgrow it, and they're all about it. So, and that, just depends on your kid.
Right. Yes. And then the happily ever after fireworks, if you know that your kiddo is going to be good to stay up that late, it's a great option to do. And maybe it's one of those things where at this age you find more of a unique or an alternative spot to watch. If they're a kiddo who's already seen the standard fireworks, but they love the fireworks, watch them from the People Mover, or watch them from Big Thunder Mountain, or, something like that is a little bit more unique now that they're a little bit bigger and can kind of handle that.
Yeah, definitely. For Epcot, again, the same kind of places to eat are similar to kind of like the ones that we did before. So Sunshine Seasons, Connections, Regal Eagle, and a lot of the food stands at the festivals as well at this age are they're maybe more exploratory in their palates than perhaps a toddler would be. So there's a few more places than you could eat for that. And of course, these are just quick service that we're mentioning just because table service is such a massive topic. So we already went over that in previous episodes, but these are just quick service ones we recommend. Rides are really child preference. Of course, the thrill rides. I feel like Soarin' is a good one for virtually everybody, unless you're terrified of heights. And pretty much all the same things with characters and shows. And then Luminous is, if they like the evening show, catching Luminous at the end of the day is always a fun experience for most people.
I will say at Epcot, some of the shows maybe are more your alley if you're in the upper age of this, right? They have some more kind of unique cultural shows in the different World Showcase pavilions that maybe your kid will be more interested in. You know, your toddler's not going to want to go into the Canada pavilion and watch the show. Right, exactly. Or any of those. But your older kiddo who maybe has a little bit more interest in world culture or geography or any of that, may be way more interested in actually taking the time to watch some of those videos that you can find around World Showcase. So don't count those out when you're looking at planning.
It's either that or they'll complain if you make them go.
Yes.
So
you need to have a conversation. It's not one of those things you can force them to do, unfortunately.
I think we went to American Adventure and my kids were like, what are we doing here? Like, this was like a half hour I'll never get back.
Do they do that with Hall of Presidents too, though?
I didn't even risk Hall of
You didn't even try.
Because we started with American Adventure. If they can't do American Adventure, they can't do Hall of Presidents. And that's just how that goes.
Yep. And that's Epcot in a nutshell. Just kidding. But yeah, so all of those same things. If we jump to Animal Kingdom again, previously discussed places to eat, Flame Tree, Satuli Canteen, and Pizza Safari are great options. And again, rides there, child preference. You know your kiddo. You know if they're going to be able to handle Everest and Flight of Passage are kind of your two main thrill ones. I will mention that Everest is. I haven't ridden Rock and Roller Coaster in a while, but Everest is one of the more intense roller coasters on property. So just keep that in mind if you're debating, you know, if your kiddo's okay on things like Cosmic Rewind and Space Mountain, then Everest is probably okay. But if it's questionable, it is kind of one of the more intense coasters. And again, other experiences, characters, shows, you're going to know whether or not they're interested in sitting and watching the Finding Nemo musical or not at this age, you know?
Maybe the younger ones, maybe the older ones, maybe not, depends.
Yes. Or if you've got theater kids, maybe they want to watch to look for more details about theater at this point in their viewing. So again, you're going to know what they want, what they're willing to do. You know, you're going to know whether or not they want to take the train to go to the petting zoo. You know, your kids at this age.
The animators one, they can draw things,
the animation,
which would be really Academy.
Academy. Thank you. I was like, what's the other word?
I know, I couldn't think of it either at first. But that might be really fun for kids who are interested in art or drawing. You know, that is actually a really fun experience where it's fun for the whole family to kind of draw a character, and then you all get to kind of compare them. So that I think would be worth it for a kid who's interested in art.
Yes. But again, it all just comes back to, you're going to hear us say the same thing at Hollywood Studios, right? It's just, it really comes down to what your kiddo wants to do. I'll just run through Hollywood Studios here, Kate, and then you can talk about Disneyland and DCA. But previously discussed food options, Stocking Bay 7, Backlot Express, ABC Commissary, Woody's Lunchbox, and Pizza Rizzo. Lots of thrill rides here, so keep that in mind if you're debating about what your kiddo might want to do. But then also lots of shows. So it's kind of one or the other at this park. There's a few in between, but not as much as some of the other parks. And characters and shows, again, like we talked about, they've got, you know, the Beauty and the Beast show, the Frozen sing-along, Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. So any of those that you think your kiddo might want to do, again, just your choice. And then Fantasmic, which is, I think, a great option for all ages in this time frame that we're talking about. It's just a really great nighttime show.
Yeah. Heading over to Disneyland, some good places for lunch for the whole family, or dinner. Jolly Holiday, Rancho, I always say this wrong, Rancho de Zocalo. I always want to say it Zocalo, and that's not how it is. Alien Pizza Planet also as well. And Docking Bay 7, which I always forget to put on my list, but that's also in that park. Rides, I'd also say, you know, as they get older, they might be a little bit less inclined to go on like the little kid rides, especially Disneyland, things like Casey Jr. and stuff like that. Some people like just never outgrow it, but there is definitely like there's an age range where they're just like, that's not cool anymore. And then eventually they outgrow that. They're like, no, it's super cool because it's nostalgic from when I was little. You know, like there's like that little like time period of like, I'm not going to go on any of like the little kid rides. And so you might enter into this time period kind of near the end of this age bracket and just take a deep breath and know that they'll probably outgrow that eventually. Um,
They'll come back around. It's okay.
yeah, yeah, bruh. Like they're not gonna. Yeah. So, bruh. That's my life. So just know that's or again with characters too. They might outgrow it for a little while and then come back to it. So just don't just take a deep breath as a parent and just know that there's ages and stages for all these things. But they also might want to do their favorite thrill rides multiple times. So as you're doing some planning, if you know that they like something or if you think that they might really enjoy something, kind of budget some time into your schedule for them to be able to do it more than once.
Yeah.
So other experiences, again, they might not be as interested in like shows and things at this point. They might be more interested in running the park and seeing how many rides they can do, or like, like doing ride after ride after ride after ride. I know that's what I did at this age. That's what I see my kids wanting to do is like, what ride are we going on next? Let's go. Let's just do something else. And they have the energy to go do it. So you might not, but they do.
Right.
And then, of course, fireworks and Fantasmic. It is nice at this age that usually they can start staying up later and they don't struggle with, falling asleep in strollers. There's none of that usually going on by this age, at least the older ones. So
Right.
it is fun because you can stay up later as a family and do things when the crowds are not as intense later in the evening.
Yeah. Which I think is why we talked about earlier with the hopper option, right? Especially at Disneyland and DCA, and you've heard us mention that before. But at any of these parks, the ability that they have to go for longer periods and want to go for longer periods of time, definitely the hopper option is super, super good for that.
Yeah, most definitely. Over at DCA, some places I recommend to eat, Flo's V8 Cafe, Boardwalk Pizza and Pasta is a good one just for kind of more pickier eaters, and anything in the San Francisco area. And Pim Test Kitchen, I think, is fantastic, especially for this age, because I think Avengers Campus is a win for anybody who likes Marvel. If they don't like Marvel, then maybe not. But I think Avengers Campus is a really great place for kids this age if they know the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And yeah, so that's one of the main places I recommend besides like Radiator Springs is also really just fun for the whole family. Like hanging out in those areas is fun. And then the Incredicoaster, there's also a single rider for the Incredicoaster. So if maybe they want to go multiple times, and you can just park it if you don't want to go multiple times.
Right.
And then World of Color, I recommend that for everybody. So that's still great for this age. But that pretty much sums up the parks, I think, for this.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up the parks in this age, I did just want to briefly mention in our kind of other thoughts about the parks category that we have on our notes here, just what do we feel about these special events or parties with this age group? Because I feel like we didn't really talk about it with the younger groups because I don't know that it's really worth it. And I mean, granted, here's the thing with the younger ages, right? That you don't necessarily have to pay for a ticket for them if they're under 3, like we've talked about. But I think personally, I have gone to a couple of the parties, and I think that this age group is a really great thing to do with them. These extra parties, whether it's Very Merry or Not So Scary or Oogie Boogie Bash or any of the extra events that you can find on both coasts. I think this age range is a really good one to take to those events.
100%. If it doesn't have if you have the budget for it, I think they're great. Right. They're really expensive.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, it's like, it depends on your budget, of course, but would I recommend the parties for? Yeah, absolutely. For this age, I think it's really fun. They can go on maybe 1 or 2 rides without much of a wait. They can, some of them you can go trick or treating or get extra cookies or like, yeah, I think it's really fun for this age in particular. It's probably the best age to go to those parties. I think, as they get older, they might still want to go to them, but they might not be quite as into maybe some of the parades or the shows as they used to be, depending on your, teenager. So if you want to go as a family to the parties, I think this is the best age to do it for sure.
Yeah, I agree, because they're to the point where they can stay up late and be okay with making it to the end. A lot of these parties run until midnight or 1 a.m. So they can make the most of their time. And if you're looking at budget for these, what I would suggest doing is, if it's something that is you're wanting to make a priority, just replace one of your day tickets with this ticket. So if you've got 4 park days that you want to do, maybe buy a 3-day hopper and then a party ticket. along with it, because most of these you're going to get a good amount of time. The Magic Kingdom ones are better timing wise than like Jollywood Nights, if we're talking, because it's Christmas time right now. That's kind of what's on our mind. I feel like you get longer in the park, so it can definitely replace a park ticket.
Yeah. So that's a way to offset some of the cost of it. But
yes.
I like for my family of 5 though, like
yeah.
It's
not one for one. It's not exactly. Yeah.
I'm like, yes, it's a lot. I'm like, just trying to do the math in my head. I was like, right, that's like as much as our plane tickets to get us all across the country for one day.
Right. Because generally, I mean, the party tickets will run you anywhere from like $180 to $220 per person, generally speaking. Now that does vary, and you're going to see some different costs in Disneyland versus Disney World for different events, because they're just vastly different, the way that they operate and run their events. You get a lot more events at Disneyland, so lots of different options when it comes to that with your budget too. So look into if you want to go to a special event and you're flexible with your dates, look into the price range of kind of historically where they've been, and that may help you make your decision as well.
Definitely. All right. Well,
any other thoughts?
I always hear a lot of people say, like, this is the best age to take your kids to Disney, and we've always said any age is a great age to take your kids to Disney. And I still stand by that. But I do think there's something to be said for the fact that it is a very fun age to take your kids to Disney, because they can go on virtually all of the rides, because they haven't necessarily crossed into the like teenage, like, I don't want to be with you or be seen with you age. Okay. Like, they still want to hang out with mom or dad or grandma or aunt or guardian or whoever it is, like they still want to hang out with you. And so that's a really, really fun time where it's also, there's still a little bit of magic there mixed in. They're capable of holding their own stuff and taking care of a lot of their own things. But it's just a really, really fun time to take them. And I think that that's true.
Yeah, so I 100% agree. I think, like we said, any age is a good age, but this age, there's still like in a little bit of the magic, right? Yeah. And they're still going to buy into a little bit of the magic, but they're also, they're able to like also understand, like, hey, we paid quite a bit of money to be here. Hey, I want to make the most out of this experience, and these are the rides I want to go on. So like the opinions make it even more fun, because sometimes your kids may have opinions that you weren't expecting, and you're like, oh, really? Okay, cool. Let's go do it.
Right. Yeah. You kind of learn new things about them by what they like, what they don't like, and what they want to do. And it's just really fun. So don't hesitate to take your kids at this age. It's a great time to go to the parks.
I agree. Now, if you are listening and you're like, what about after this age? What about my teenager? What in the world am I supposed to do with them when I want to go to Disney? Take a deep breath and join us next episode, because our series is coming to a conclusion. In our next episode, we are going to be talking about taking teenagers to Disney.
Buckle up, bruh.
What that looks like.
Sorry.
No, the sad thing is my 8-year-old calls me bruh, and I'm like, this is too early. This is too early for
there.
No,
sorry, Jackie.
Nope. I told him it's not allowed. I was like, well, the problem is that he hears it from his friends at school who have older siblings.
Yeah.
Right. He's my oldest, but like he hears it from the kids
that are just entering in that age. It's just it's coming.
And I'm like, if you don't know what it means, we're not saying it. Because he'll come home with all these terms and I'm like, do you know what that means? No. Well, who told you? Oh, so-and-so at school. Well, if you don't know what it means, we're not saying it. He's like, oh, okay.
I'm just going to give you one piece of advice, Jackie, since your kids are starting to age into this. There's some great people on TikTok that specifically specialize, that are middle school teachers, that teach you what the kids are saying and what it means. Start following them now, because it's going to come up and you're going to be like, oh, but I know what that means. And then you also know the things that they really shouldn't be saying, and they're saying it. And you're like,
yeah. See, the good thing is my husband works with middle schoolers and high schoolers, so I feel like I've got some insight of him. At least, yeah, it is. It's good. I've got a little bit of a leg up on that one, because it's just no. Anyway, so long story short, if you want to know what to do with your teenagers at Disney, join us next episode.
I'm so cringy according to him. According to my son. So
I mean, aren't we all a little cringe? Okay. Especially when we're talking about Disney and going to Disney. It's good. Before we wrap this episode up, though, we need to make sure we get to our Ask the Mom segment. So if you are new to our podcast, we end every episode with our Ask the Mom segment where we take a question from our community. Could be related to our topic, could be not. And we answer it to the best of our ability. So our Ask the Moms for this episode is... I want to purchase magic bands for my kids, which is kind of timely. We talked about magic bands earlier. Will they be able to charge things on their bands, or can I limit that? And that is a really good question. So, Kate, do you know the answer to that question?
Well, I'm pretty sure I do. I do know that you have to assign like a PIN number to it in order for them to be able to purchase. So if you don't assign a PIN number to them for their magic band, then they're not able to purchase anything with it. So if you want to give them purchasing power, you can give them a PIN, assign them a PIN. Yeah. But you can't limit it as to a dollar amount as far as I know.
No, you cannot. It will get charged to your room. And again, this function only exists for if you are staying at a Disney resort. You cannot charge with your magic band if you are not. Right. The other option is you can do what I do, which is I set a PIN for my kids and then just don't tell them what the PIN is. Because here's what, but
my kids.
But here's why. Because let's say, for example, we are down by the pool and I didn't bring my magic band, or my magic band isn't working and I want to grab some food and I don't have my wallet with me, I can use theirs.
Yeah, that's smart.
So that's why I do it that way personally. But again, my kids are younger and they don't have a clue. With older kids, like Kate said, that may or may not fly if they know that like there's a pin attached to it and they're like, wait a minute, what? So
yeah, as a note, this does not work at Disneyland because they don't have purchasing capability there, full stop. So your magic band doesn't pay for stuff, period, there, just at Disney World. And an alternative to that, if you just are like, I don't know if I want to give them like the full ability to purchase whatever they want. We use like Apple Cash a lot. Yeah. So if they have a phone, you can just send them some money via Apple Cash. They can pay with their phone virtually everywhere. I think that might be a better way to keep them on budget.
Right. Or gift cards. We've talked about gift cards before too. So lots of other ways that you can, if you want to give them a spending budget. I do not suggest magic bands, though, if you want to give them a budget, because it's very hard to track. Now, you can track it in your app real time if you're still on property, but once you leave, you're going to have to like email guest services and ask for an itemized receipt and all that stuff. And that's just a lot of extra work that you should not have to do when you're coming home from your Disney vacation.
Yeah, usually they'll give it in your pay folio when you check out. It'll be an itemized list of all the purchases, but you also don't want any surprises on there of things you didn't know your kids purchased.
Yes, just in. Yes, all good things. So, long story short, yes, they will be able to charge, but only if you give them access to by creating a PIN for their magic band.
Right. Which you can do in My Disney Experience, correct?
Yes. Yep. You can do it on the website, and you can do it on My Disney Experience in the My Bands and Cards section, I believe is what it's called, on an app. Yes. And then but you do have to click in, because like it is person specific, right? So like if you are assigning pins, like my pin would be assigned separately from my husband's, from my kids, those types of things. Now you can set them all the same if you want to, but you're going to have to do it individually. So it's not like an account pin that you have. It is specific to each person.
Right.
So okay. Hopefully that helped answer.
Yeah.
We went a little rogue there for a minute, but we brought it back. We brought it back. So if you are someone who has a question that you think would be good for our Ask the Mom segment, please send it to us. You can reach us. We are at Mom Street USA on all of our social media channels, or you can email us momstreetusa@gmail.com. Please send it our way because we are here to help make your trips easier. A lot of the information that we share is stuff that we already know and have in our brains because Kate and I have been around Disney for a really long time.
A long time.
So if you are new to the Disney space and you're like, I need help, and you have specific things you need help on or want help on, send it our way.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. I think we've tackled this particular age group at Disney. And next time we'll be diving into teenagers at Disney. So yeah, that'll be an interesting topic as well. But thank you all for joining us for this episode of Mom Street USA. Jackie, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
I think we said it all. Take your kids to Disney at this age. It's a great age.
And have fun and just let them do the things they love to do. Yes. Love it. All right. Well, thank you for being with us, Mom Street friends, and we'll see you next time on Mom Street USA.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.